Good morning, everybody. I'm Randy Burton, and by the way, my email address is right up there on the board. If you feel free to write that down, email me if you get into this year and have questions, issues, comments, problems, suggestions, etc. And be happy to help in any way we can. The folks on the board will pretty much do anything we can do to help you as coaches. We can't help your kids, but we can certainly help you. And so don't hesitate to ask. And that really applies, I think that, in terms of some advice that I can give you. Tournament day, if there are issues, find one of us and tell us about it right then, that day. Nothing frustrates us worse than after the tournament's over, everybody's already gone home. A couple of days later, we get contacted about issues that we might have been able to do something about, but we didn't know about it. So please give us some help with that. Thank you for coming back again. So if you're in here, you must be a returning coach, which means we didn't scare you away last year or whenever. And Chris, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Chris Bonin. I am a problem captain. I've been a judge, a coach, a parent, nervously biting my nails while my kids perform. And so thank you. I know exactly what it means for you to have decided to come back, and I'm really, really appreciative of that. The lecture that I give every year, for those of you, because I see some familiar faces, is talking about staying safe. And I approach that from two different arenas. The first, staying safe, is our kids are going to be using power tools, knives, all kinds of scary things. It is not outside assistance to go and grab something away from a kid that you think is going to hurt them, that's going to hit their head. I just want to be really, really clear about that. Safety is paramount. I do get cuts, I do get paper cuts and things like that. I have had a little bit of blood, but we're looking for no ambulances showing up at a team meeting. That's the goal. But then I approach it from another viewpoint. I do a lot of work with the Boy Scouts. I know there's a lot of Girl Scout moms in here too. There's something called 2-deep leadership that the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts use, and I think it's a really good idea. And the idea is that you should never be alone with one of your team members unless it is your own child. And the idea is you just don't want to get into a situation where somebody might be accusing you of something because you were alone with a child. So don't put yourself in that situation. What I did when I was a coach is I just always dragged coach's kid along, right? We all have coach's kid. Just drag them along and just use your common sense. If there's a project that has to be done, you want to think about involving the whole team anyway. You never want to be able to say, hey, Johnny, you're supposed to be finishing that costume. Why don't you come over to my house after school? My kid has soccer, but you can come and work in my house by yourself. You really, really don't want to do that. And it's just a matter of keeping you safe and using common sense. Is that okay? Does anybody have any questions or comments about that? All right. Changes this year. I'm going to let Randy talk because he goes real in depth in the program changes and it's all really technical and I don't understand it. But some of the things that we are encouraging this year, we have some younger folks on our board right now that are encouraging us to go a little more technical. It's really cool. So we're doing some things with email. Apparently in the past, what Mr. Hansen was doing is he had everybody's emails in a spreadsheet and he was cutting and pasting emails, and that's why our emails weren't very a lot of them, because it was very difficult. Every time he had to send out an email, it was taking him like an hour to send it out. So the young men that have done OM for their lives have come back and have said, that's not the way you do email anymore. And we're like, what? We don't know. So they have set up all kinds of cool things for us with listservs, and duplicate emails should go away, but you should be getting more emails that should keep you more current with deadlines. One of the deadlines that everybody seems to forget is when to pay the money. And so hopefully, and everybody's great, everybody's very kind, we do eventually get all the money. It's just that you've forgotten about the deadline, and then you get reminded right before Christmas, and who wants to go out and get money right before Christmas? So we understand, we're trying to send more emails out, so you should see more emails, but you're pros and you don't need to read them. That's okay. The other big change, of course, we're embracing some technology here, so we'll see how that goes. We'll see if these young men can actually get these up on YouTube. We'll see if that happens. Oh, I'm not going to look. You can look. The other big change Very nerve-wracking, but we are moving the tournament. The tournament will not be at Chapel Hill High School. Are you ready?
More parking?
That's good. We're moving it to the main campus of Wake Technical Community College, down there in the Fuquay Arena area. And they have like 5,000 parking spaces. With change comes good and bad. They do not have a space big enough for our award ceremony, so we are being very creative. We do have a big space, but it only holds 800 people. Do you guys have any idea how many people, human physical bodies, come to our tournament? It's up to about 3,000. We have about 3,000 people coming to our tournament, and that is why Chapel Hill feels so crowded. It's just numbers. There's nothing wrong with Chapel Hill. It's just gotten too small for us. So Wake Tech has 20,000 students. So we're very confident that they can host a 3,000 human being tournament. But they have a conference center. It's like one of those hotel conference centers with 4 rooms that we'll be using for venues, and we'll be trying to use that for award ceremonies. And we're just gonna have to get really creative. And if that makes anybody think of something and you wanna drop us a little email, we would love to hear what you guys think about that as well. But the buildings are beautiful, but they are not like Chapel Hill High School. Chapel Hill High School has those, and Smith Middle School has those beautiful auditoriums. You know what I'm talking about, the theater ones? There is nothing like that at Wake Tech. So if you need to, as a coach, look very carefully at the site requirements that are in your problem. We are going to try desperately to make sure we have more space than that, but it might be that you have the minimum space. Yes, ma'am?
If it's in a, like a hotel kind of conference room, that makes me think that the floors are all carpeted.
Oh, yes. We are struggling with that as well. Yes, and my suspicion, my thought, my recommendation at the next board meeting is once we know where everybody is competing, we're going to ask the problem captains to send out a note to you coaches saying, you have floor or you have carpet. I don't think that should be a surprise on competition day. So I think that'll be a note that'll come from your problem captains. There's like lecture halls, you know what I mean, like college lecture halls that aren't as big as the auditorium. It's kind of like, has anybody been out to World at Michigan State? And there's a couple lecture halls there, and it looks very similar to that. There's like 2 aisleways, and then like an area down at the bottom. That's not huge, but it's not small. There's a couple of those. There's a lot of classrooms about this big, but they have 2 doors, and then we'll push tables and chairs. Those will be really comfortable, but they're not huge. It is a classroom. You've got to think about the door. Your teams need to be able to get through a door. And is it outside assistance for you to help them get through the door? No, you can help them get through the door, but is it outside assistance for you to build their set after they get through the door? Yeah, they need to know how to build their set. They've got to get it through the door, and they need to know how to put it together. Does that make sense? And it'll probably be ceilings like this that you need to deal with. My favorite memory of Chapel Hill is the Lions Club. They always do, that team always does such a beautiful job. And they came into the media center, and they had this boat with this gigantic mast, and then their sets were sails that came down. It was beautiful, but they walked into the media center and it was too short. So we did accommodate them. We tried to figure out a way to make it work for them, but they were so off kilter because it did not fit in the room. So you really need to make sure, if you're building your sets in a garage, you need to make sure that your kids think about a regular ceiling height. All right, so yeah, we'll send more information about that, but we are pretty excited. We're scared, but we're pretty excited, yes. And that is as much talking as I have. Is that okay?
There's not very many changes to the program guide this year. I don't know if any of you guys have had a chance to look at them. One thing that has changed that is actually, I think, makes life simpler for everybody. Forever, and honestly, mine, as long as I go back at least, there's always sort of been this list of these are batteries that are okay and these are batteries that are not okay. And what we did to confuse everybody is we moved batteries back and forth between the 2 lists all the time. So just to confuse you, whatever battery was legal last year wouldn't be legal the next year. So this year we've changed all that, and we've said basically every battery in the entire world is legal as long as it's smaller than certain dimensions, and it's a length plus width plus height. It's got to be less than 15 inches. Okay, so that still precludes lead acid car batteries. And I'm really hoping nobody is thinking that it'd be a good idea to let little kids use lead acid car batteries, because the things are extraordinarily dangerous. That's why we have the size limitations. But we've gotten rid of this, absorbed glass mat batteries are legal. No, they're not. Yes, they are, whatever. If it's a battery, it's okay as long as it fits within those size dimensions. So that's a kind of a big change.
So for the math teacher and me, what they're saying is the volume of the actual battery can't be more than, was it 15?
Well, yeah, but it's slightly more complicated than that, right? Because it's just length plus width plus height. Now, if it's a round battery,
it's
then
not-
you
it's
got to
like the
figure out whether
carry-out
it,
bag box.
Yes.
so
Plus, there you go, plus, not multiply,
Yeah.
plus. Length plus width plus the height can't be more than 15 inches, is that what you're saying?
that's what the program guide says. So that's a good thing. There's another change in there that we are not particularly happy with. For those of you who do for the performance problems, there is a definition in there that has changed around what a stage set is, and the word immovable is in there, and it really shouldn't be, because the stage sets can potentially be moved, and sometimes they have moving parts. So the word immovable is causing people a lot of confusion. So if you have questions about that, feel free to submit a clarification online, talk to your problem captain, whatever, and we'll try to get that straightened out. I suspect we're going to change the wording of that next year, but the program guide's already been printed for this year. Yes?
Are you saying just ignore the word immovable? Like, what is the purpose of that word if it's not?
So,
it can't
so
be-
what they were trying to define is the difference between a prop and a set, right? And in a performance problem, props tend to be things that they use and do things with, and sets are things that are sort of fixed, and I'm not a performance problem person, but I know people who are, and I did stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night. So anyway, the stage set is supposed to be like the background. That's the mountains or the lake or the ocean or the whatever. And so the thought was, well, that's the stuff that doesn't move. Well, when Odyssey of the Mind kids are creating sets, they frequently want them to move. They want that background to change. They want it to go from a mountain to an ocean like that, because all they do is do something and it flips around and so forth. So people are getting kind of hung up on this word immovable, right? So stage sets can move in certain ways, right? So don't get hung up on that word.
So all intents and purposes, nothing has changed since the set is concerned.
And I think, worried about the set that your kids have come up with, put in a clarification. Ask,
Please do.
put in a clarification.
That goes for sort of anything, okay? That clarification process does far more than just give you and your team an answer to a question. It helps us make sure we're judging consistently, not just across the teams here in the Eastern region, but across North Carolina, across the United States, and across the whole world. So there's lots of people who see those, not teams, not coaches, not team members, but all of the problem captains from everywhere see those, the international problem captains see them, tournament directors see them, so that we know how to judge things consistently. So if there's something that you're just not sure about, if it's something that doesn't look right, if it's something that please submit a clarification. Go to the members area, click on the little clarification thing, and it's going to ask you some dumb questions like, are you really sure that it's not already written in the program? Yeah, well, I wouldn't be here if I was, and so on and so forth. So just go through that, and please feel free to do that. If you do have questions that are more local kind of questions, like, am I going to have a hard floor or carpet? Don't submit a clarification, because the international problem captains don't know, right? So that's got to come to us. That's my email address that's up there, and you can also go on the website for the Eastern region and contact us that way. But please do. Tournament day. And you're all experienced coaches, and I hope none of you have ever had to go through this, but if you have issues with your team's score, okay, something doesn't look right, you think they didn't get credit for something that they did, you think that they got penalty points that they shouldn't have gotten, please do not go home without talking to us about that, okay? Talk to your head judge first. If you don't like the answer you got from your head judge, find your problem captain. I'm the problem captain for problem 1. Problem 4 is right here. Marge Mo's problem 3, she's right next door. We are there that day to help you. If you have problems, come see us. We will figure out what we need to do.
And it is awkward, being a coach, it's so awkward to come, but it's better to come and have an awkward conversation with us than to go home and then send us an email because you've slept on it and you woke up mad. There's nothing that we can do after the tournament is done. I mean, it's really like
You know, 'cause
moving a
if it's
mountain.
something that's the difference between your team going up and getting awards or not, we can't fix that the next day. We can't redo an award ceremony and have them up there in front of everybody giving them trophies and medals, right? We've got to fix it that day. So come find us. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid that, oh my gosh, if I go and talk to them, then we're not going to take it out on anybody. We want to get those issues resolved that day. As a last resort, sometimes if we still can't figure out the right answer between you and the problem captains, there is something called a tribunal. There's a form that you fill out and request a tribunal, and we will convene the tournament directors. Tom Hansen gets involved. We want to do that. The last thing in the world I want to have happen is your teams go home and not happy with their score and not feel like they had an issue that we didn't address or talk about or whatever. That applies at the state tournament, applies at World Finals as well. So, I had 2 or 3 coaches that came to me after World Finals last year, after we got home. One of them was an issue with some food. They had somebody with some specific diet requirements and they weren't getting the food they needed. They waited till after they got home to tell me. I'm like, I'm sorry you had that problem, but if you told me about that on Wednesday, I'd have fixed it for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But you wait till you get back. I can't help you. Same thing applies here. So please get in touch with us if there's issues that you don't think are right. We've got volunteer judges. Last year I had 34 judges in problem 1. 29 of them had never judged before. Okay, so they're volunteering their time just like you are, and they're new to this. They're going to make mistakes sometimes. Okay, we're going to try our best to catch them, but if you catch them and we didn't, come talk to us about it, and we'll give you some help. That's I think it in terms of rule changes or anything like that. What questions are on your mind from last year, or what are your teams worried about, so forth?
Okay, so how many of you were at tournament day and you thought, did I give too much outside assistance? Did I give too much outside assistance? Come on, be honest. Everybody thinks it. Everybody feels it. So there is a new session this year called Outside Assistance where they go into it in depth. And the problem with outside assistance, boy, it comes down to interpretation sometimes, you know.
We can.
We have lots of discussions about it on the board, which is why we're having this session. So
Actually, a lot of the material they're using for that came from Delaware, and the association director in Delaware, I know him real well, and he did an amazing job of putting this PowerPoint together with all of these really borderline issues. Is it outside assistance or not? And we've kind of taken that and modified it for the training here. So just about every single thing in there really has happened, before, and it's about penalty points and all that kind of stuff.
yeah. So I highly recommend it.
Yeah,
Now,
that's
you guys are
gonna be-
returning coaches. Some of the stuff you really don't need to go to, like spontaneous. So try to work that in.
But I will tell you, the last thing in the world you ever want is for your kids to have earned points and have those points taken away from them, right? That's the worst thing in the world that could ever happen. So
And they're so honest. They're so honest. When they talk to the judges, they will blurt it out in a heartbeat because they're just excited to tell the judges how coach helped them. Oh, that's such a beautiful foam tree. How did you make that? Oh, coach cut it for us and coach bought it and this and that. And then the judges just go, oh, crap, because they,
I mean,
and it's so sweet and so cute, but
And those are pretty cut and dry situations,
Yeah,
right? You know, if
yeah.
the kid tells us that they didn't make it and somebody else did, okay, that's fine. But there's lots of other areas that are much more gray than that, and they'll get into all of those in that outside assisted setting. But I will tell you, in 34 years of this, I'm going to bet 80% of the penalty points that I've ever had to assess have all been outside assistants. I mean, that's the biggest problem that we have, and it is so hard. Having coached for some of those years with both of my kids, I can tell you, when you see a solution 6 inches in front of their nose and they don't see it, it is the hardest thing
hard.
in the world for
It's so
you to do,
hard.
not to just say, well, why don't you just do, because you can't. You know?
The coaches that I've known, the hardest thing for us is sitting and watching them perform it, because especially when, like the vehicle problem, when something's not working and the kids keep trying it over and over and over, and you're as the coach sitting there going, move on, you're not going to get it done. And this is outside assistance. It's a penalty. Every judge is sitting there looking at you. It's going to happen. So when I was coaching, I was advising my fellow coaches to sit on their hands. And there were times when my team did the gift of flight, which was all these really cool things that they had to throw that only worked half the time. I sat around the corner. I was terrified I was going to do this. So we've all been there. I mean, it's so difficult. It's so hard, but yeah.
So you know, some things you can do, I think, as coaches, and some of you experienced coaches may have tried some of these things in the past, but come on in. The things that I've tried to do when I was coaching is prepare the kids for things to go wrong. Get them to expect things to go wrong and practice, what are you going to do when this happens? And I would wrap spontaneous practices into that. Say, okay, what can go wrong on tournament day? Your spontaneous problem is to tell me, what can go wrong on tournament day and what are you going to do about it? And we just have a verbal spontaneous, and I would write down every single thing they said, okay? And then we talk about it, okay? And I would ask them, okay, if that happens, what do you need? Well, we need duct tape, we need super glue, we need, okay, that's not outside assistance. They said, we need super glue, we need duct tape, we need a hammer, we need a screwdriver, whatever. You write all of those things down, and then you make sure that somebody has it on their to-do list to make sure all of that stuff makes it to the tournament. Okay? Very effective way of practicing some spontaneous and helping them be prepared for stuff to go wrong. Yeah?
Last year, we had, at regionals, the stage was really big. But then when we got to states, it was the, I guess, exact limit of what it would be in worlds. Is that gonna be the same thing this year, or are they
You
gonna?
always have to count on the smallest space. Always, always, and always. And when I was coaching, I tended to do the performance problems, and the kids always think big with their sets. And they had done, my daughter who's doing brainstorming, she had built this gigantic set with ladders and everything. And I can remember once or twice saying, you guys, did you read the problem? It only says you get 7 feet by 12 feet. And the kid said, we always get more space than that. Don't worry about it, Mrs. B. And I was like, okay. And guess what? They didn't. And they're out in the hall crying. And they figured it out. They calmed themselves down. They ate a candy bar. And I'm like, go and figure out what you're going to do about this. And they got their act together and they did it. But that was an incredible life lesson, because the problem says they're all a little different. I think the performance, I think problem 5 says 7 by 12 feet. Now,
Yeah, small.
we try like the dickens to give you more space than that, but sometimes it's just not feasible. We just can't do it. So yeah, totally 100%.
Yes.
I always encourage the kids, and I always make them, I'm going, okay, well, how much space do you have? And I have them mark it on the floor.
Awesome, like with tape or whatever.
And they have to
Mhm.
put all their props, and then they've discarded some. It's like, but we can't move, and well, what are you gonna do? So, and then if we have more space, it's like, hey, we have this much space. I'm going,
Yeah.
great.
I take it, I tell my teams to, when I was coaching, take it as a gift. If you've got more space, think about what you want to do with that. And then they'll get in a huddle and they're like, oh my God, we got the big stage. Let's spread out. You go over there and you go over there. And I'm like, awesome.
There was a
Brilliant.
question back here somewhere.
Yeah, I have a question, back about outside assistance. I'm coaching a high school team, and there are members on that team that have been doing it, they're pretty much professional now, to the point where last year I felt very superfluous, I was just a name on a piece of paper.
Awesome. Awesome. Good job, coach. Good job.
Except the one person on the team has been doing it so long, reflecting back, she kind of took the role of like an over-involved coach, and she like did everything to the point where the whole solution was her. And, you know, and other people, you know, tried to read it through, and she's like, oh no, I've read it through again, I know everything. And I'm just wondering, because I know you guys have both experienced high school teams, do you have any words of advice for that kind of?
Brainstorming sessions work really well, where you kind of get them and get, you know, either a whiteboard or a flip chart or something where you can write things on. And
Post-it notes. I would do with that situation, because she's very strong and you don't want to discourage her. In fact, sometimes if she would listen to everybody else, she could probably take their ideas to this incredible level. So what I used was Post-it notes, and I said, we're going to think about this. Everybody go into their corner for 2 minutes, write as many Post-it notes as you can, and then you put it up on the board, and then you mix them all up, and then they don't know whose idea it was, and then she's forced to look at everybody's ideas. There's lots of different other ways. That's what I did.
Yeah. That's kind of tough, because you will have some kids on your team, on every single one of your teams, that are, you know, the more introverted, you know, versus extrovert, just personality traits. They're going to be the ones that tend to be very passive on things. And you want to get ideas out of those kids, because they may have the best idea in the world, but they're afraid to say anything because they're intimidated by the surroundings, or they're intimidated by the kid who thinks they know everything. And you're going to have some of those too, right? So your job as a coach is to kind of work through that a little bit with them and try to pull those ideas out of the kids that are not as forthcoming with those things. Again, there's nothing wrong with you writing down what they say. If they come up with an idea and you write it down and then you talk about it, that is absolutely not outside assistance. That idea didn't come from you. All you're doing is facilitating them discussing that idea and so forth. I would also encourage you to take some of the tasks and break it up amongst some of the team members, so that not all 7 kids are trying to solve everything. So you can take that kid who's not coming forward with some ideas and put them in charge of solving something, some component of this or some piece of it. And then kind of force them to come forward with some ideas and so forth, right? So that's very effective. Video recording them doing their performance and making them watch it can be very effective. We did that a lot, particularly as we're getting closer to, you know, the January, February time frame, and they got some things going. And you know, don't tell them what to do, but I would ask them things like, okay, we're going to watch this performance you just did, and I want you as team members to look for times when you have nothing to do, and think about what you could be doing during that time. So get them to be thinking about, well, while they're doing that, I could be over here doing this. So that's another way of doing some things to try to bring these ideas out of them, because you're going to have some kids who are going to want to sit there for 8 minutes, right? So try to get them doing something during that 8-minute time.
And you might fail. I mean, they might still not do anything, but that's okay. You tried.
Yeah.
You tried.
The other thing is my experience with all of my teams that I coach. You know, when they get actually on that stage or in that gym or whatever, they're nervous, it's competition day, things take them a little bit longer to do than they did during practice. So if you're practicing for an 8-minute performance and you're trying to hit 7 minutes and 55 seconds, I guarantee you they're going to run over at the competition, because they're going to drop things that they never dropped before because they're nervous, and they've got to stop and pick them up. It's going to take them a second longer to remember what they're supposed to say. So practice that for a shorter period of time than the 8 minutes, to leave them some extra time for some things to go wrong and for them just to be nervous.
We actually had the reverse problem. We practiced, and they were so fast because they were so excited.
Yeah.
That I had to be like, okay, stop. We're doing this like micro slow, and because when we had it in practice and I videotaped it, it was only like 5 minutes or something like that, and they were just. And so then it was like slow down. We could only get it up to like 7 minutes and 30 seconds or something like that. It was crazy.
And that's okay, because my daughter's team a few years ago, first place in the region, first place in state, goes to World Finals, and they had never gone over 8 minutes. They were doing problem 3, so it's okay to go over, right? So they were over by a few seconds, got a 5-point penalty, and that was the difference between second place and fourth place. So they came in fourth, where if it hadn't been for them having gone over those few seconds, but they were just nervous. They're up on a stage in an auditorium with 3,000 people in there watching them, perform, and they were just a little nervous. And so, yeah.
So for last year problems, do you have the video recordings of the winners?
We do not. If you go to YouTube, you can find.
It's very spotty though, it's not always there.
We don't, as OM, we don't record the kids. That we're not recording anybody. So if it's on YouTube, it's a coach or a parent that's particularly proud and wants grandma to be able to
Yeah,
see
because
it.
I think I have a lot of the same members coming back, so it's probably good for them to at least look at the performance and how much stretch they can have. But it's very
You want
spotty.
them to look at their
Yeah.
performance, or
No.
you want them at a winning performance?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like what is the difference between winning performance and their
You know, the good news is it doesn't even have to be last year.
Yeah, but,
But
but the problems are different, right? So if they have done that problem and if you look at that problem, because we watch other performances
Sure.
on that day,
sure.
kind of get them to see
Yeah.
what other people can do and things
Yeah,
like that. But,
absolutely.
and we watch some of the high school performers, so.
So-
Did you guys like the passport thing last year? Did anybody
yeah,
take advantage of
I
that?
think my younger one, elementary one, had more fun.
Because that was the whole point of that, was to encourage them to go see other skits so that they could glean some things. And, you put a little toy, a little gift, what was it, a pencil, an Owen pencil or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, put a little gift at the end of it.
It was good.
You,
And,
you liked them?
yeah,
Yeah,
was it
my
good?
elementary kids like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually, that came from the association directors meeting last year, and the AD from California was talking to the rest of us about that, and I was kind of taking notes, and I was like, why don't we do that? So I'm glad that worked. We will do that again this year, so expect that, and just encourage your kids to go watch other teams, not only for supporting the other teams, and kind of cheering them on, but they were going to get some ideas out of that for potentially what they might want to do next year. But, yeah.
Exactly. It gives them an idea of what the other problems are. They're like, ooh, some people tunnel right to problem free all the time.
Right. That's how my kids got interested in balsa. That everybody's afraid of the balsa problem, but
Right.
then you go see it, and it's so exciting to see that structure collapse and crash and everything. And my daughter was like, maybe I could do this problem. And the other reason that we did that I liked the passport is as a prom captain, as a judge, and as a coach, invariably I walk through and I see kids sitting with their sets in the hallways. And I'm like, oh, when do you perform? They're like 3 hours from now. I mean, they're antsy. They're sitting there forever. There really is a ton of stuff to do at the tournament. And the last thing they need to be doing is sitting in the hallway with coach going, be quiet, sit still, sit still. I mean, they are kids, even up through the high school kids. They are kids, and they just need to move around a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's why I really like that program. I think it could really be great.
The other thing I would ask all of you to do, particularly if you have some Division I kids, but it really applies to all of them as well, get them to practice speaking loudly, okay? I see an awful lot of Division I kids, and the judges are straining to try to hear what they're saying. And sometimes we're in a big gym, and it's kind of noisy, and it's hard to hear. So get them to practice talking really loudly. When I had the kids that I was coaching, I would stand as far away from them as I possibly could when they were performing, or even if they were doing a verbal spontaneous. And I made them speak loudly enough for me to hear them. And if they weren't, I would stop and say, you have to talk louder, I can't hear you, because I'm as far away from them as I possibly can. Just get them in the practice of doing that.
Do you guys know the secret of that yet? They speak like this, nobody can hear them. But if they lift their voice up and just go into a lighter, higher treble, you can automatically hear them better. But if they're doing like this, you can't hear them. So just stage presence, lift that chin up, put that chest out, and it'll just come out a little higher, and it'll be great.
So get them to practice that, because it really, we struggle with that as judges sometimes of trying to be able to hear them, particularly during their long-term problem. The spontaneous, it's a little easier because they're in a smaller room and there's not all these other people around and so forth. But even there, I see kids sometimes are a little nervous, and so they're saying things and the judge can't hear them. If the judge can't hear them, we can't score them. You know, so just help us with that. Get them to practice that.
Do you guys know what problems you're doing? Have you decided already? You got your teams, everything's kind of rolling along? Are you excited?
Yeah.
I think the problems are good this year, right? Yeah, I think they're pretty interesting. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay.
I'm
What
really
about for the
excited
rest
about
of you?
this year.
What other questions that you have? Yeah.
I don't know if this is a general problem or not, but I will say at our school, we have a lot of students who, let's say, have ADHD and so take medication to get them through the school day, but often when it comes time to practice, they're coming off that medication, and it is very hard to
Calm them down.
to get people to focus. And I just wondered if other people have experienced it.
I banned sweet snacks. If I
Okay.
gave them
Okay.
like Wheat Thins
Yes.
versus Little Debbie, it seemed to help. And if I banned juice boxes, and gave water, it seemed to help. It's not perfect, but it did seem to help.
We had a boy who had a lot of issues,
Yes.
and we found that giving him very specific tasks
Mhm.
helped. And so we built the car last year,
Oh,
and
okay.
so he did a slingshot all on his own. But if he was focused,
Okay.
if we could give him a task that he was really excited about, it worked.
Yeah, we had the same, and
Yeah.
he actually did better when he had his own
Yeah.
project to work
Mhm.
on than when he was in,
Yeah.
even with just one other person, and it depended, you know, we sort of ended up figuring out who he could work with well,
Yeah.
but when he was all 7 of them together, he
Yeah.
just couldn't focus, and he
And I
actually.
found
it
that-
It was disruptive.
And I found the Post-it notes worked really good with slightly more hyper kids, because they had to go in the corner. They weren't trying to get the words out, but they could write 8 million Post-it notes. You know, I always had a stack for them, and they could just roll with it. And then it kind of calmed them down, so by the time we were putting stuff on the board, they had gotten their ideas out. They had been heard. It seemed to help. I don't know.
Yeah.
Similar idea, but a little bit different. Divide and Conquer, last year, we had all fifth graders, and one was clearly in that situation. But once they were teamed up with a team of 2 or 3 with a specific task, it was a similar result. We made so much more progress after we started doing Divide and Conquer than when they were a group of 6. And they were just all, you know, I mean, it was a
Right.
huge difference.
Right.
And
Yes.
that just, I wish we had started that earlier.
And you know, I was listening to the radio. I know we have to go, but I was listening to the radio. There's a website out there called understood.org that talks. It's designed for parents. Understood.org. It's designed for parents who think their children have issues. But I think that could actually be a really great place to go. And again, I was just listening to this yesterday, because what they were emphasizing, and I'm a true believer of this, they were emphasizing that we are a nation of immigrants, explorers. We're all ADHD. That's why we're here. And we need to start celebrating that. And I think these divide and conquers and Post-it notes, we are celebrating the fact that these kids act outside the norm. And they do. This is such a wonderful, I get so emotional. It's such a wonderful opportunity to give these kids this opportunity to be creative. I need to be sitting still in a classroom with a boring math teacher. That's what I am, a boring math teacher, telling them, do this, do that, sit still. They need this opportunity. So thank you for giving it to them, and try to just stay patient. You're not going to have all good days.
Something else that works well is to allow them to go to the whiteboard, or, turn on your smart board and let them lead the discussion, and it's amazing what will come out.
And yet
Sure.
they work terrible on hands-on problems for spontaneous, right? Yeah, it's just, if they have their turn in the verbal, it goes really well. I never came up with anything gitchy to get a slightly more hyper kid to work well on a hands-on team. It was great, bumping the table. I was like, stop bumping the
So, just, schedule-wise, as Chris mentioned earlier, we're at Wake Tech, in, March 7th, I think it is. State tournament will be at Appalachian State University, up in Boone. That's the second weekend in April. So April the,
5th or something.
no, it's the following weekend, 12th, 13th, 14th, whatever that Saturday is. And then World Finals is at Michigan State, and it is leading into Memorial Day weekend this year. So the Wednesday before Memorial Day, you arrive and you go home the Sunday of Memorial Day. I know there are some school systems that have some issues with end-of-year testing along then. If you run into issues, most schools are pretty forgiving for allowing the students to schedule that testing at a different time. If you run into things where that's just not possible and your team is going to World Finals, let us know. We can monkey the schedule at World Finals so that they can either get there later or leave early if they need to get back for the testing. But once again, we can't do that for you if you don't tell us about it. So just let us know if you have those kind of issues going into that. And we had a number of issues with that last year. We had to schedule some things around and get some teams moved in
For
the schedule.
the high school teams, it tends to be AP test time too, so that's just something to put in the back of your mind if you get that opportunity to go to Worlds. That was a royal pain last year, but we worked it out.
All right. Any questions?
Have a great day, have a great year.
Great year,
High
great
five,
time.
everybody. Thank you for
Thanks.
coming.